And we are live. Welcome in, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Dream Stream here at FTNDaily.com. Presented to you, as always, by Superdraft Daily Fantasy. My name's Zach Graham, a.k.a. Kawaisenberg DFS. New setup behind me. Still working on that. Got to work on these shadows back here. Another shadow next to me who is becoming a regular on the Monday Dream Streams, and I like it. Adam Pfeifer, how you doing, bud?
Nervous. There may or may not be a massive football game tonight. But then this slate was crazy. Like this morning already, and then it's just like, oh, okay, like cool, and it's just madness. So yeah, we definitely have to break it down.
Yeah, this is insanity. I was reading off some of my 10s in the rankings to you before we went live, and just kind of saying that just tells you what kind of slate it is with some of these names here. And 10 games. I know that Kyle and Javi crushed it before us behind the paywall, as they always do. So they went game by game. We can kind of jump around, and I guess where I want to start, if it's all right with you, is kind of with that news and with the rankings, because I guess let's just go through it here in terms of the news. A lot of this that we've just gotten in the last 60 minutes. Tobias Harris is in for Philadelphia. Tyrese Maxey is out. On the Charlotte side, if you haven't seen the Charlotte COVID news yet, LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, Mason Plumlee, and Jalen McDaniels all out in the COVID protocols. Then Ish Smith, who received a $1,400 discount from his price yesterday on DraftKings, actually had an 11 tag in the rankings, and then he was out and put into the COVID protocols about a half hour ago. Let's see. Spencer Dinwiddie is resting for the Wizards. Aaron Holiday will start in his place. Memphis still is without Ja Morant, Kyle Anderson. Brandon Clark is doubtful there, and the rookie Zaire Williams is in. The Miami side, Jimmy Butler is back. Bam Adebayo still out. Obviously, the Heat also remain without Victor Oladipo. Markieff Morris still nursing that whiplash injury. Denver and Chicago just got a little more interesting, in my opinion. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter, Bones Highland, Bol, Austin Rivers, PJ Dozier, all out for the Nuggets. But now the Bulls even more shorthanded than they were going to be already, with Alex Caruso doubtful. He did not go through shoot around. Kobe White is out. Javonte Green is out. Obviously, Pat Williams out for the majority, if not all, of the regular season. And now DeMar DeRozan joining them on the sidelines. He is also in the COVID protocol, still waiting on some news from Milwaukee. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the big piece of news there, yet to drop with that calf injury. He is questionable. The rest of the Bucks are priced up after his last two absences, so we'll get there if we get that news in this hour. 4 games to go here. Let's see. Atlanta and Minnesota. Atlanta, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, Solomon Hill, all out. Cam Reddish, I believe, still questionable. I don't think I've seen that news come through just yet. Again, anybody in the chat or Adam, if I'm missing something here, definitely stop me and let me know. Minnesota side of this game, we're waiting on Karl Anthony Towns. He did practice over the weekend, so I think he's leaning more towards probable, but that's just my own editorializing there. D'Angelo Russell, also questionable. Pat Beverly, questionable, looking to make his return. And then the other McDaniels, Jaden McDaniels, is probable still, but with that illness, non-COVID illness. The Spurs will be without Devin Vassell. And, of course, Zach Collins against the Suns, who are also without Devin Booker, and still no Frank Kaminsky, Abdel Nader, or Dario Saric. Same bodies out for the Magic in Golden State, massive underdogs tonight. Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz, Michael Carter-Williams, etc. Etc. being John Isaac and E'Twaun Moore. No real big news. Andre Iguodala out for the Warriors, and obviously Clay and James Wiseman still out. Surprisingly, no real news from the Clippers side. I believe Batum is close to a return from the COVID protocols. He is with the Agua Caliente Clippers at the moment. And then the Blazers side, to round it out, Dame Lillard remains out. Anthony Simons remains out for this team. Nasir Little with a ankle injury, questionable. I actually think that Nasir Little has that him being in would be significant news for this Blazers team and some of the value that they present, certainly on the late slate. So after all that, Adam, we're here 10 minutes in now, almost. So let's dive into it. I guess let's talk about the 10s up top. And I want to hear from you. Do you disagree, agree, love this, hate this? I've got 8 10s on DraftKings so far today. 3 of them Hornets. Kelly Oubre sitting at 5.8 on DraftKings. Cody Martin 3.9, and James Bouknight. That will come down. I'll go ahead and say that now. That 10 ranking will come down if he comes off the bench, but I do think there's a chance he starts, and he projects really great regardless. So it would probably be like a 9.5 ranking if he doesn't start. Then you get 2 Chicago Bulls entering the 10 range with the DeMar DeRozan news. Those 2 guys being Derek Jones Jr. at 3.6 and Ayo Dosunmu at 3.1. Then 2 spend-ups, my 2 favorites on the slate. Nikola Jokic, who we can talk about now, kind of in line with that Chicago news in that matchup. Joel Embiid at 11K flat against the shorthanded Hornets, and then Shake Milton at 4K flat with the Tyrese Maxey news. We do need to make sure Shake gets the start here, but you would think he would. Brandon Clark remains doubtful. So that is all the news. Those are the DraftKings 10s. Pick one of those players. Talk to me about those rankings.
Yeah, I mean, like, Ish Smith was pretty much the clear top value play of the slate until we got the news that he's going to be out, and I think that just moves right to Cody Martin. So, like, Martin would be a 10 for me as well, so I agree. And I love the fact that you have Jokic on there. I wrote about Jokic today. Chicago's post defense is awful. They actually allow the most post-up points per game in the league, and we know Jokic, outside of Embiid, leads the league in possessions and points off post-ups. Vucevic himself, too. If you look at some of the numbers, he actually is the second worst among like centers and power forwards, post defender in basketball. So this should be a massive spot for Jokic. And as you kind of mentioned before the stream, like DeRozan being out makes this game very more likely to stay competitive. So yeah, Jokic for me is clearly the top spend up. And then the Charlotte value is obviously immense. So yeah, like I really do agree. And it's crazy. Like you get the Ish Smith news and it's like, okay, well, Ish Smith was such an easy value play and the best value play, but I really do think it just goes, as much as you would have liked Ish Smith, you just go right to Cody Martin. Are you muted, Zach?
I think I went like almost 3 weeks, dude.
I'm glad I looked over because I could have, it could have been like, a minute of you just going.
Yeah, I mean, what I was saying into the abyss there was that Cody Martin already projected as a fantastic play at 3.9. I mentioned at the top the discount that Ish Smith got. Cody Martin got one as well after just playing some massive minutes yesterday. I mean, Cody Martin came off the bench yesterday, but played almost 32 and a half minutes. PJ Washington also came off the bench for 38. But you're losing Ish Smith, who played 32 minutes yesterday, and with guys like Miles Bridges, who played 40, Kelly Oubre played 39, Gordon Hayward played 33, Cody Martin played 32 and a half, PJ Washington 38. Those minutes have to go somewhere, and there's only so much room for an increase on those guys that were in the rotation yesterday. So for me, that's why James Bouknight is such a strong play now with Ish Smith out at the flat man. And I think what should be some low ownership on a 10-game slate with so many other value options. So if I'm running multiple lineups, I'm going to have some shares of the rookie Bouknight there. But outside of those two cheap guys, like the other Charlotte players in the rotation that I just mentioned have some really strong ranks here too. You look to the nines, Miles Bridges at 7.7. I mean, like all these guys got a discount. It's ridiculous. Like Miles Bridges played 40 minutes yesterday. He's down to 7.7. Gordon Hayward at 7 flat. He should pick up a little bit of the ball handling duties with Ish Smith out. And then you've got, PJ Washington, and he's the lowest of those guys for me because of his matchup across the ball. Like you're going to see some Nick Richards. You may even see some Vernon Carey or Kai Jones in this one because of this front court across the ball. Not only Joel Embiid, but then you're getting Andre Drummond in any non-Embiid minutes. So I think in the front court, I'm kind of staying away from Charlotte. It's more the guards and the wings for me, and I want to attack the Charlotte front court with Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte's been that matchup for like 2-3 years now for centers. They just don't have anybody to slow Embiid down. You do wonder with Charlotte so depleted if they can keep it close, but like the Sixers haven't been dominating this year anyway, and they're going to be without like their third best player. I mean, Tyrese
Hmm.
Maxey. So it's like, I feel like if playing Embiid, I would feel better running it back with the Bridges, Kelly Oubre. Like it's so easy to do because you mentioned like the prices didn't adjust given the situation not changing in Charlotte. So yeah, this game's obviously going to have a lot of eyes on it, but it's just so hard not to get there. Like yes, obviously Cody Martin is like such an easy play at his price, but it's like even so is Kelly Oubre, so is Gordon
Hmm.
Hayward. It's just like for we might see like playoff type minutes from some of these players, like we saw in the last game. Like you mentioned, Bridges played 40 minutes last game.
Yeah, it's just that I don't think I'm making a lineup on DraftKings specifically where I have less than two Hornets. I think that's a rule I would set. And I think depending on the combination of Charlotte guys, like I think I'm okay with four Charlotte guys at the most here. And I would be more confident in running four Charlotte guys if there wasn't so many other places that we can get good value on this 10 game slate. So some news rolling in here. Karl Anthony Towns will play. D'Angelo Russell ruled out. So now we need to see some Patrick Beverley news. There it is. Patrick Beverley ruled out. So maybe some Jordan McLaughlin. We'll see how this breaks with the Wolves. But continuing on to that Philadelphia side, I mentioned how strong of a play I think Joel Embiid is at 11K flat. He's also forward eligible on a site like Superdraft and sitting just off that multiplier floor 1.05x. I love pairing him and Jokic. Obviously, we'll get to Jokic here in a minute, but on Superdraft where you can do that, I love pairing those guys. And then Shake Milton, as long as he gets the start at 4K flat, it's really tough to make multiple lineups and not have some Shake in there as well.
Yeah, Shake's over a fantasy point per minute with Maxey off the floor this season. Um, Usage rate's just under 24% the last time I looked. So he will take plenty of shots. The usage will be there. I would imagine he starts too. So yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of different things in this game. We obviously got the news that Tobias is going to be in, but with Milton out, like Tobias is probably like the most overlooked player in this entire game because most people just go to Bridges at the same position. I'm not saying Tobias is my favorite play from this game because he's not, but it does make him a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I mean he's not a terrible GPP play. I think for me, like he's priced, I think correctly for
Exactly.
his role. Right, Ben Simmons still out and Maxey out. Maybe there's a little bit of meat left on the bone there, but like to your point at 7-9, like I still would rather get to Bridges, and I think there's other options if you want to get away from that ownership. Like right below Bridges is Jeremy Grant. And like, call me crazy, but against OKC, I'm not even considering any sort of revenge narrative. Like, Jeremy Grant's been putting the ball in the basket at a pretty high clip. I believe 32 plus real points in two of the last three games. And a matchup where like it's similar, in my opinion, to that OKC Houston matchup that we've already seen four times this year, where when two bad teams get together and these players are priced down, like there's some opportunity there. So and we're not even touching on Jaron Jackson Jr., John Collins, even Gordon Hayward, power forward eligible there. There's just so many other options where I can't prioritize Tobias Harris, especially since he's in one of these three games that tip off right at lock. There's certainly some advantage to be had as we get the news that Giannis is a game time decision today. That game tips off an hour after the slate locks, so pushing some salary back to adjust to that news, I think, is also going to be beneficial. And my EuroLeague friends rejoice. Leo Bolmaro will start for D'Angelo Russell. And if you're saying who, it's fair enough. I believe drafted this year, not 2 years ago, and then like have the rights and come over. But Leo Bolmaro, not somebody that I'm looking to attack because of all the other options we have on the slate, but that's just going to increase the usage for, the two studs that are left, Ant Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, and probably gives a little bit more credence to playing guys like Malik Beasley, like Jaden McDaniels and Jared Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Edwards had like most games he has like 50-point upside, but like in this game I think he has like 35, 40 real point upside potentially. Like would not shock me at all. I don't think I would go elsewhere from Minnesota other than Towns and Edwards just because like you said I don't think you have to. But this is probably the craziest slate that I've been on a show for. It's just, it was already pretty interesting. And then, we get SGA is apparently in now, and then the DeRozan news, and it's just Shake Milton's. It's just ridiculous. And I'm sure it probably is gonna, like you said, we're still waiting on the honest news. We're still it's absurd.
I mean, just wait till March and April NBA if you think this slate is crazy. But this is certainly giving us a taste of what we have to deal with for like the last 6 weeks of the regular season. Let me go ahead and get Bolmaro into these rankings here. He may not even be on Superdraft, or I'm just spelling the name differently. That's what it is. Got to have his Superdraft multiplier populate if I can get that right. I can't. So we'll move on, and I'll continue to work on that as we go here. Well, let's flip to the Chicago-Denver game, because I think that's kind of the other timely news that has rolled in over the last hour, and we talked about it at the top. But for Chicago specifically, now you're going to get obviously more usage for a guy like Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, even Lonzo Ball going to get a tick up with the DeRozan. And I think probably a pretty big increase in his assist opportunities with DeRozan off the floor. And Alex Caruso still not, I think he still remains doubtful, but we expect him to sit. So I mentioned also Derek Jones Jr. and Ayo Dosunmu, very strong value plays for me. What would you be prioritizing from the Bulls?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious, Zach LaVine, 35.5% usage with DeRozan off the floor this season, 1.2 fantasy points per minute. I do like the Lonzo call, though. He's got a 20% assist rate with DeRozan off the floor, just under a fantasy point per minute. And DeRozan's been fantastic this year, but we know, like, a lot of his scoring comes off, mid-range, isolation. And with him out, I think there's more LaVine. If he doesn't have the ball, it's kind of spotting up. Vucevic has been spotting up a lot for the Chicago Bulls. So I feel like you're going to see more assist opportunities and potential assists for Lonzo. So I actually do think he's interesting. He's also, you can make the case, given his recent stretch, he's probably, never mind, because going into the game, you could say at 7,600, probably a little bit too expensive, but now with DeRozan out, it feels about right. So I do like the Lonzo call. And then, yeah, I mean, it's mainly those two. Vucevic is fine, but his price is up after some strong games. I would feel better about Towns now that he's expected to be in with Russell out at $200 more. So he's close enough to like Embiid and Towns that I probably would lean those guys. But yeah, I mean, LaVine, Lonzo Ball. But that's the other thing. Like, it's not even just DeRozan. Like, Caruso's doubtful, Kobe White's out. Like, there's plenty of minutes and opportunities available for other players too.
Yeah, absolutely. As I continue to struggle here I have once again messed up the positional column on the ranks, so that I've identified where I deleted incorrectly, and that will be fixed momentarily. Yeah, man, I mean, you talked about it. LaVine, I think my preference here at the top over Nikola Vucevic. Just if I'm going to spend mid 9Ks, I want the guy who's shown a high 30s in usage with DeMar DeRozan off the floor this year. And it hasn't gone extremely well for Nikola Vucevic against Jokic in his career. Only cracked 47 DK points, or exceeded 47, I should say, in one of their 8 career matchups. And then Jokic, on the other hand, if we can flip to the Denver side real quick, has absolutely decimated Vucevic, at least in their last matchup, which was, to be fair, only a few days before Vuce got shipped off to Chicago. But Nikola Jokic, 70-plus DK points in that matchup with a massive triple-double. And it's not going to be crazy to see something like that again here with the Nuggets so shorthanded. And Jokic really picking up right where he left off, coming back from that wrist injury in his last 2 games, 18, 15, and 7 with a steal against the Magic in that tough loss that they took back on the 1st of the month. And then on Saturday's matinee game, got truly back on track with 32, 11, and 5 in just 27 minutes, 14 of 19 from the field for 54 and a quarter DK points. So with this game, let me refresh the Vegas odds here. I would assume this game is inching closer. Yeah, what opened as a 5-point spread in favor of the Bulls is now down to 2. So even with that 213.5 total not jumping off the page, this is just a spot where if this game's going to stay close, it's on the back of Jokic, and I want all, like, it's extremely accessible at that 12K price tag now with all the value options that we have. So if you look down the rest of Denver's roster, is there anybody here that you can get to, or is it just there's so many other options elsewhere?
Yeah, and it's not even just that. It's like Aaron Gordon priced a little bit like Jokic is out, and he's just been like when Jokic is in, his fantasy production is awful, and
Mm-hmm.
that's with Michael Porter Jr. still out too. So it's like he's in a situation where he could be good, and Will Barton's 72. Like, I don't see how you will get to Will Barton on this slate when Jokic is in there. Will Barton's like, well, when Jokic is in and Porter's out, or one of those players are out, I feel like Barton's like 30 fantasy points more often than not. So it's like I just don't see how you get to anybody else. Monty Morris is over 5K, where he's usually a little bit below 5K when Jokic is out, or when Jokic is in. So yeah, Denver is literally like Jokic is probably my favorite play of the entire slate. So there's that, but then the rest of Denver is no for me.
I agree, and P-Buck coming in here with the timely question asking any Zeke Naji love for Denver, and if the news on the slate had broken in a different or more reasonable manner, we could have maybe looked at that. But I think Zeke really getting a little bit more time at the expense of a guy like JaMychal, and with JaMychal Green, Jeff Green still available, like it's tough for me to get to Najee. He did play 34 minutes against the Knicks on Saturday, but I think a more reasonable expectation here is probably mid to high teens in minutes for Najee. And with the other options on the slate, I can't get there. Even if I was running 20 lineups, P-Buck, I would have zero Zeke. And there's Charge Up, but one of my EL buddies coming in thought that said Leandro Barbosa at first, the Brazilian blur. That would certainly be fun to watch him come back for a night. Let's see, before we move on, one question here. Turner and Levine, Miles Turner and Zach Levine, or Joker and Triple J? It's the second one for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess just to finish it off, to hammer that point home, Derek Jones Jr., Ayo Dosunmu should play 30-plus minutes here, and at their prices are fantastic values on DraftKings. Alex Caruso is expected to miss at least 1 week with that hamstring injury. Grayson Allen is expected to play for the Bucks, while George Hill is ruled out. Still waiting on that Giannis news. So let's talk a little bit about some of these other games that will be less in the focus of the field tonight. And I want to start with the Pacers game here, because it goes off at lock in about a half an hour. And we've got Spencer Dinwiddie sitting for the Wizards in this game, currently a 5.5 point spread in favor of the home team in Indiana. But Bradley Beal down under 9K now on DraftKings. You've also got kind of the rest of this team descending in price. Kyle Kuzma 6 flat, both centers Trez Harrell and Daniel Gafford hovering around the 5K range, and kind of your normal value guys here: KCP 4.2, Raul Neto, Denny Avdia, Davis Bertans, and then the guy I think we should have the most interest in, Aaron Holiday at 3.1, getting that start. But again, like with guys like Neto, Beal still there, Kuzma, just like other high usage guys on this team, and the other values that we already talked about, I can't prioritize Aaron Holiday. Like, I'm not going to call you crazy if I see him in one of your lineups, but it's just really tough to get there. Any interest in Beal up top? He's cheap now.
Yeah, I mean, Beal's been interesting this year because he's been more of like 37 to 43 fantasy points, because Washington, he was playing with Westbrook last year, but he was still like among the league leaders in usage and scoring and everything. But then everybody else in Washington, they didn't have role players. But now he's got no high usage Westbrook, but he's got plenty of role. He's got Kuzma, he's got Trez, who's a high usage player off the bench. So it's weird that his fantasy numbers and his overall numbers are down the way they are. But when we last saw Dinwiddie miss a game, it was against Dallas, I believe. And that was a more upside game for Beal. He had almost 46 fantasy points. So now under 9K, I think he's extremely viable. And yeah, Aaron Holiday he just hasn't done much when he started this year. He's barely over 0.7 points per minute with Dinwiddie off the floor. It's not like he facilitates the offense, and it just leads to more ball handling duties for Beal. So I'm not really interested in Holiday or Neto. Kuzma's kind of perfectly fine at 6K. The Pacers have been a pretty bad spot up defense for the last couple of years, and Kuzma's like top 10 in spot up points per game. So it's honestly just Beal, Kuzma, and Daniel Gafford, like, I wrote him up in the value article again. Again, this was at like 9 today before like the slate got completely crazy, but his minutes were down last game. He played 15. He picked up 2 personal fouls in the first 3 minutes of that game, came in for his second stint like a little bit into the second quarter, immediately picked up another foul, and the foul trouble just hurt him. He only played 15 minutes. But prior to that, he's been in 27 minutes in most competitive games. And this is a game against Indiana with Turner and Sabonis. They probably need Gafford to play 27 minutes. And the last, I believe, week, he's like a 35% rebounding rate, well over a fantasy point per minute. So I think Gafford's still perfectly viable under 5K. I'm not worried about the minutes from last game. Could he get into foul trouble again? Yeah, I guess, but so could, almost any center on the slate. So if you are looking to save at center, Gafford would probably be my guy among the, because honestly, center, we talked about the value in Charlotte and some of these other teams, but center is not really the place you go, right? Like you're like PJ Washington's not exactly cheap at center. So really, if I'm not playing like a Jokic and Embiid or something like that, I do still like Gafford. He's been very productive.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think you can play really either of those guys. Daniel Gafford's somebody that can pick up 6 fouls in a in a hurry. But then if that happens, you're going to get Trez Harrell, and with his price down at 5.2, I think both of those guys certainly viable. And I'm with you. I would prefer Daniel Gafford getting the start there. Some more news
Hornets,
rolling in.
You got the Hornets starting 5.
Yeah. So we got Hornets point Gordon Hayward. Cody Martin will slide into the 5 alongside Oubre, Bridges, and Nick Richards. And Shake Milton will get the start at the point for Philadelphia alongside Seth Curry.
So he remains a 10 for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And Boone Knight drops down to a 9. I think Boone Knight still projects into the low 20s, mid 20s in minutes for me. So at 3K flat, I think he's a really strong play. He's the guy that's going to go out there and take a bunch of shots when he's on the floor. And if this game blows out, if Philadelphia takes care of this team, as they should, in my opinion, then Boone Knight certainly will see that blowout run. So it's certainly in play still, but not as strong for me. And everybody else that we discussed on that Charlotte side, still fantastic plays. Anything from this Pacer side, because even with TJ McConnell and Justin Holiday out, I'm not seeing a ton. Like, we kind of had Karis LeVert week, last week, where he was priced down everywhere and everybody just kept kind of riding it. And he had like what I guess you can call the boom game last game with 27 real points, but still only managed 38 DraftKings points in that game. And so I feel like his peripheral ceiling is so limited at this point that he has to score near 30 real points to put up a fantasy game you're happy with on a slate like this. So I have no priorities from this Pacers team, but I think if I'm getting anywhere, it would be Miles Turner at 5.9K.
Yeah, the 2 players, and again, they're not like priorities. It would be too cheap Miles Turner and Chris Duarte, who's been playing massive minutes with McConnell and Holiday out. Mm-hmm. His peripherals have not been good, and he's probably not going to get a lot of peripherals playing with Sabonis and Brogdon. But he's taking like 13, 14 shots a game over his last 5. So like if he kind of fits your last spot in your lineup, I think that's perfectly viable. But again, like no real massive priorities from Indiana.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about the other game going off at lock here. Oklahoma City visiting Detroit.
You were robbed of Point Giddy.
I know. And even at 6'8", I would have definitely been on my guy Josh there. But with SGA back in now and priced up at 8.6, I don't think he's out of play if I was running 150. I would put him in my pool if I was running a 20 max, but I don't think that any opto would spit out any of these OKC guys. I think it's a pretty quick discussion for me. Lou Dort still in play at 5.4. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl priced down, getting the start at the 5 against Beef Stew. I think that's just fine, although you do have Derek Favors back, Mike Muscala, and Isaiah Roby still up with the team. So maybe some more danger in rostering a guy like JRE. And then Darius Bazley at 4K flat, I think is somebody that I might have a share or 2 of if I was running 20 lineups tonight. But even at those prices in this good matchup, I can't prioritize any of these guys.
Yeah, Robinson, Earl, and then obviously Giddy were on my radar very, very heavily. Earlier today. You can still play Robinson Earl because he's starting and he probably gets to like 27, 28 minutes at 4,100, but it's obviously not as exciting. And then obviously Giddey just would have been, last time we saw him play without SGA was that Atlanta game and he was really good. So you can't go to him now. I'm kind of off like this game is interesting because it's two bad teams. The game could be up and down, but outside of really Jeremy Grant, I'm not crazy about it. Like Kade Cunningham's showing upside with the peripherals, and he's been shooting the ball a little bit better as of late. But I just not really on this game, especially given some of the news we've gotten over the last hour or so.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to get to any side of this game. Like we're talking about Detroit now, like Kade Cunningham at 7.7 on DK is fine, 1.3x or 1.35x on Superdraft, if I recall correctly. Jeremy Grant, though, at 7.6, more of a Superdraft play for me. I think if I'm choosing between those two low-owned Piston spend-ups, so to speak, on DraftKings, it would be Kade Cunningham with the triple-double upside. But when you look at a site like Superdraft, Jeremy Grant, obviously forward eligible there, 1.45x. I have some interest there. Beef stew is fine. You're going to get some extended run from guys like Killian Hayes, Frank Jackson, even Saban Lee could see the floor in this game with Corey Joseph out and Hamidou Diallo out. But again, it's just I can't prioritize anything from this game. But any of those guys we just discussed from these two sides, wouldn't call you crazy if I saw them in your lineup. Pacers will start. No surprises here. Brogdon, Duarte, LeVert, Sabonis, and Turner. So let's talk real quick about Memphis and Miami. The only game that goes off at 7:30 Eastern. Desmond Bane's price up to 6.8, which is wild. If you go watch his college highlight tape, I am in the first highlight of him dunking on one of my guards 2 years ago. Never would have thought I'd be recommending him at 6.8 on DraftKings against a Miami team. And I'm not strongly recommending him, but he's certainly in play. I mean, this guy's taking upper teens in shots and playing mid-30s in minutes with Ja Morant off the floor. If I assume there's a showdown slate, so that's where I would have most of my interest from this team. But Desmond Bain certainly in play. I prefer to get up to Jaron Jackson at 7.2. Obviously, positionally, it's very different, but either paying the extra $400 for Triple J or taking the $400 savings on my guy Dylan Brooks, who it's still really like last week was kind of Dylan Brooks week for me, and like it didn't work out. The guy's been shooting pretty terribly, or the Grizzlies are just blowing out the Thunder by an NBA record, 70 whatever points it was, and Dylan Brooks gets 15 minutes. So down to 6.4 now. I think he's somebody in DPPs that you don't have to play a ton of to get over the field. And in this game that is supposed to be decently competitive, the Grizzlies are only 6-point dogs on the road here. I think Dylan Brooks is interesting. Tyus Jones at 5.6. Also, again, this is it's a tough matchup, but not a lot of people are going to get there, and you're going to get 30 plus minutes out of Tyus Jones unless the Grizz completely get run off the court.
Yeah, Dylan Brooks I think Morant's been out 4 games now. During that span, Dylan Brooks leads the team in usage rate around 29%. And we know that usage rate's going to be right around that mark pretty much until Morant's back. And then Jaron Jackson Jr., we're seeing more upside. Obviously, the minutes have been down the last couple games. The one was obviously the blowout. Got into foul. I mean, he has 5 fouls in 4 of his last 5. And the one game he didn't pick up a foul was the 20-minute game where they beat by 73. But we've seen this team go through Triple J and Dylan Brooks when Morant's off the floor. I don't expect that to change. Mm-hmm. And I also don't think on the other side, he's not going to be asked to do as much defensively. Obviously they have Steven Adams to play minutes at center, but if they had to play Triple J at the 5, against Dwayne Dedmon as opposed to Bam, you're not asked to do as much. So maybe he doesn't have to worry about foul trouble as much in this game, especially as much, with PJ Tucker just kind of sitting on the perimeter or whoever's at the 4. So I actually don't think it's a bad spot for Triple J in terms of foul trouble. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jimmy Butler will Jimmy Butler is back, right? He's expected to be back.
I believe he's expected to play.
Yeah, he's warming up, so he does get to the basket a lot, but I think Triple J is still my favorite player from this team. Bane's been just ridiculous.
Yeah.
The last couple games, he's just like you said, he's shooting a ton.
Yeah, he's been great and kind of like helping Memphis keep their head above water. Like they've had some obviously some good matchups, specifically that Thunder one. But yeah, I mean it's not enough can be said about the effort that Bane has put in this year. And then some of these other guys like Melton's had stretches. He's at 4.7. Tough to get there on this slate, but perfectly acceptable on the showdown or if you're running 150. I don't think it's even if Brandon Clark is out as expected. I don't think I can prioritize a guy like Santi Aldama or John Concha or Xavier Tillman here. But out of those three, I think Aldama would be the one that I would take a chance on if I'm throwing some Memphis value guys on a lineup. But we talked about Jimmy Butler expected to play here, 9.4 on DraftKings. Pretty much takes Tyler Hero at 7.3 out of play for me with Jimmy back. Kyle Lowry still at 7.5. Not crazy, but not priorities. I think Kyle Murray, I was in and out listening to the previous show, but I think Kyle was pretty high on Jimmy Butler if he was active. Are you kind of on the same Jimmy train with Kyle?
I mean, he's a really strong play, assuming he's active. I mean, usage rate's under 31%. Both the rebounding and assist rate are at 20%. Like, if you can get like that's why Josh Giddey I was so excited about. He's over 20% use rebound and assist rate without SGA. Like those metrics are amazing. But Butler's in that same category: 20% rebound, 20% assist rate with Bam off the floor. We know Bam oftentimes grabs defensive rebounds and brings the ball up, and they're not gonna have Dwayne Dedmon do that. 1.47 fantasy points per minute with Bam off the floor. So yeah, I think Jimmy Butler is somebody you have to have interest in.
Yeah, it's
a lot tougher though because you have Zach LaVine without DeRozan. You have Anthony Edwards for a decent bit cheaper with no D'Angelo Russell. So and then you have some of the wings from Charlotte. So again, we sound like a broken record, but the slate is just so it's already interesting with value in general. But when it's one team that has as much value as they do as well, it makes things a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And Jimmy, like I'm somebody that I think plays Jimmy Butler less than the average NBA DFS player. I don't know why I'm that way, but I kind of shy away from him pretty consistently. But to your point, I think tonight at 9.4, still holding I think the Q tag on DraftKings. Certainly,
you would prefer LaVine, right?
Absolutely.
I do too.
And even in a tough matchup, like I would prefer to spend up the $800 to a guy like Dejante Murray. Even against Chris Paul, he's just producing every single time he steps on the court. So you can, I think I would prefer Bradley Beal for 600 cheaper. I think I would prefer to drop down to Ant Edwards for 1,300 cheaper. Just kind of guys in that similar positional range there. So. But what are we going to do with Milwaukee if Giannis is in? Because obviously still priced up, second highest price player on the DraftKings slate. Matchup against Cleveland where Milwaukee's going to need all their big bodies, especially Giannis if he's out there. Obviously Bobby Portis, Boogie Cousins on that team now will get some time. But I guess let's say if Giannis is out, guys like Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton have been priced up, but not to a crazy level. You got Drew Holiday 8.5, Chris Middleton 8 flat. If Giannis is out, what would you be prioritizing from the Bucks?
I think I would prefer even though he's more expensive, I would prefer Drew Holiday actually. The time of possession and touches have been in his favor with Giannis out the last couple games. If Giannis is in, I don't know how much interest I have in Milwaukee because I just prefer Jokic to over Giannis by a decent margin. And look, Cleveland's defense is really good. Like, and it doesn't matter for Giannis, obviously. It doesn't matter for a lot of players in the NBA, but like they have players where it's like if Jarrett Allen gets switched onto somebody, he's one of the centers where you feel at least a little bit comfortable with him on a switch. Evan Mobley's length is ridiculous. Like those two have been amazing. Mm-hmm. Garland's actually been very engaged defensively like their defense is good. Okoro's a great defender. So it's like if you play Giannis, like he's amazing. He's one of the best players in fantasy, one of the best players in the league. So sure, but I just prefer Jokic. And then obviously if Giannis is in, you can't play Bobby Portis, you can't play DeMarcus Cousins. And then you have to say, okay, in regards to slate, you're probably not looking to pay 8,500 for Drew or 8K for Middleton when there's Ant Edwards and some of the players we've already talked about. So if Giannis is in, I don't think I play anybody from Milwaukee, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you with Giannis today. Like, if he's in, I still prefer to get to Jokic. I still prefer to get to Embiid, and then Giannis would be third for me. I do think I would prefer Giannis to a guy like Steph Curry, who's 100 cheaper at 11.7. They're just
yeah,
the Warriors.
That game's already over. So
yeah, yeah, and I think that's pretty much the extent of our analysis on that game. So
seriously.
But some of these other games, like we kind of touched a little bit on Dejante Murray. So the Spurs visiting the Suns tonight, obviously a tough matchup for a below average at best Spurs team. But Dejante Murray at 10-2 continues to produce, hasn't dropped below 47.5 DK points in, one time in his last 9 games. So, and that was a 30-point blowout of the Blazers. So I think he's really strong. Derek White continues to produce more like how we were used to him producing from a fantasy standpoint in years past after a slow start to the season. Jaco Puerto, obviously not a great matchup against DeAndre Ayton, but I think at 6K, still in play. I don't want any of the Keldon Johnson, Doug McDermott, Lonnie Walker, etc. If you're playing a showdown, this is a standalone 9 Eastern game, then I think, 12 to 14 minutes of Thad Young at what should be a really cheap price tag on the showdown would be acceptable. But that Spurs side, the Phoenix side with Booker out, any priorities for you from this game?
I mean, Chris Paul, the metrics say you should play him, but he's not been good the last 2 games with Devin Booker out. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's just because the Suns are still a good team and they have, Cam Johnson that can step up and make plays. Mikal Bridges, obviously Ayton. Like, I think Ayton gets overlooked so much. Like, he is just always in that low 7K range. So it's like he's kind of like a perfect mid-tier center for almost every slate. And they'll play through him in the post more with Booker out, and they'll run a lot of pick and roll with him and Chris Paul. So I do think they correlate if you wanted to stack this game or something like that. Like, in a vacuum, if I told you Chris Paul is 8,300 at home with no Devin Booker, you'd probably be interested. It's just then you look at the game log and it's okay, he hasn't been good. But I still think he hasn't been. The other thing is, like, he's just not shooting. He's taken 15 shots the last 2 games, which, again, Chris Paul's had 20 assists during that span, so that helps. But you would think he'd be in closer to like the 17, 18 field goal attempt range with no Devin Booker.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that it's kind of just like with Booker out, I think, Chris Paul has the ball in his hands more, but it's opening up opportunities for those shooters that they have that don't get a ton of time, like a Landry Shamet. You're getting more Cam Johnson out there, and probably some more Cameron Payne. So, like, surrounding Chris Paul with those guys, to me, makes him more apt to just drive and kick or pick and roll and find guys off of that compared to when Devin Booker is in. So, yeah, these got like Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton are fine, but I think if I'm getting Phoenix exposure, it's more to the guys like Cam Payne, Landry Shamet, and then more secondarily, Cam Johnson. So, yeah, that's fair. I mean, we touched on Orlando, Golden State, not a ton to get to here. Like on the late slate, I think it's interesting to look at a guy like Wendell Carter or Mo Bamba, even Cole Anthony, who should probably pick up really low ownership. Certainly on the main slate, but at 8K flat, I think he's kind of an interesting pivot to your certainly the Steph spend up on the other side of this game. CJ McCollum for 1,000 more on DraftKings, so more of a late slate play there. But then you can certainly go to a T. Ross, a Gary Harris against this Golden State team on a late slate. If you roster Steph Curry on the main, that's fine, but just be wary that this game could rival that Memphis OKC performance that we saw the other night. I'm not calling a 70-point blowout, but I think this is the largest spread we've had on the young season, up to 16 now in favor of the Warriors.
Yeah. Did you hear Van Gundy on the broadcast when they went to somebody's at the free throw line and they showed the upcoming schedule on ESPN and it had the Thunder on primetime and he lost it. He's like, you can't put them on primetime. Like, Adam Silver needs to step in. Like, if you lose by 70 plus points, you are not allowed to play on primetime anymore.
He's not wrong, right? Like, I mean, I don't know why you would. I guess you maybe want to showcase Giddy and SGA and stuff like that, but yeah, he's not. He's not out of line for that comment. That's for
Weren't
sure.
weren't the Grizzlies fans chanting defense up by like 75 too?
Oh yeah, I think because it's kind of like everybody. Certainly now, like everybody's on their phone, everybody's on Twitter, so you start seeing that score at the end of the game. You probably start wondering. People are googling it, I'm sure, in the stands. Yeah, it was really interesting to see how engaged that crowd was, up 70, however many points it ended up being. The other late night game, probably with more interest in a main slate context, Clippers at Portland. Paul George up to 10-6 now, has not been good from a fantasy standpoint, really since the first 2 weeks of the regular season. But I think this is a matchup where you can go back to him at what is probably going to be pretty low ownership on a 10-game slate like this. So I think he's fine as a spend up. No real priorities down the rest of this roster for me on the main slate. I do think Serge Ibaka should continue to get the start. They were on a back-to-back on Saturday, so I think that's why his minutes were limited. If we see him get back to 25 to 27 minutes here against Nurkic and the Blazers, Ibaka at 3-4 could turn into a pretty nice value.
Yeah, and this game's interesting, obviously, with Portland's backcourt also so depleted. McCollum's expected to play. 9K seems like a lot, but then you remember, like it's just him and Dennis Smith Jr. who's been priced up. I don't want to go to DSJ at 5,300 on this slate. And Paul George, he goes through these stretches where the usage is so high, but the shot's not falling, and that's kind of been the case the last couple of games. 5 of 21, 7 of 20, 11 of 24, 5 of 19, 7 of 23, 8 of 26. But all I hear is 26 shots, 25 shots, 23 shots. So, yeah, I mean, Paul George, would you rather take the savings on Paul George if Giannis is active and play him or Giannis?
Man, that's tough because Giannis just has such a high floor.
I know.
And I don't think they're going to just blitz this Cleveland team, at least maybe till later in the second half. That's just not the feel I get from these two squads.
Cleveland's not getting blown out anytime. They're
scrappy.
They took Utah down to the wire last game over the weekend. Their defense is just and we haven't talked about it, but Garland is playing out of his mind. Even if Giannis plays, I don't think this game blows out. And I probably should have made a lunch bet with Joe, but forgot.
He's still got 6 minutes. Ping Joe Metz, get him on the horn, get a little lunch bet on the books. That's always
Jimmy Butler officially active, by the way.
Nice. That's always going to enhance your experience when you got a lunch bet going.
I have enough on my plate with the Bills tonight, so I didn't really think much of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So the other side of this game, obviously Damian Lillard's still out. Anthony Simons also out, waiting on the Nasir. Little news: CJ McCollum is a fine spend up in my opinion at 9K flat. Nurkic, okay, you're kind of crossing your fingers and hoping for 27 plus minutes for Nurkic, but you always have there's always the chance that Billups limits Nurkic to low 20s in minutes, which would not be great at 7-1.
Dennis Smith Jr. He's a Toronto Jovel.
Absolutely, that's a great comparison.
That's where he's at.
Very apt, yeah. Dennis Smith Jr. up to 5'3". It feels really weird, but I think he's actually pretty safe, especially if Nasir Little remains out for this team. Dennis Smith got blowout time about, I think it was 5:51 when they kind of waved the white flag last game and DSJ stayed out there. But he had 31 minutes up to that point. He was going to play well into the 30s. And so I think he's safe regardless of the outcome of this game. And it feels really weird to say, but I like DSJ at 5'3".
Any interest in Nance if Little's out?
I think it's more of a late slate thing for me. Obviously he's been getting more time lately, but we haven't really seen the same productivity from Nance from a fantasy standpoint as we were used to with your Cavs or previously with the Lakers. So he's just a secondary value for me, and I don't think I would have any.
I think Lillard and Anthony Simons being out wouldn't hurt. Obviously, McCollum and Dennis Smith Jr. are the main beneficiaries, but Larry Nance is a very good passing power forward. So if he plays 25 minutes in this game, I would not be shocked if Larry Nance had 5 assists. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, that's not crazy at all. But now that we're under 5 minutes until main slate lock, I know we've got a couple questions piling up here in the Discord. So we'll start with our guy Kruggers, the resident Canadian. here in the FTN NBA Discord channel. He's asking a 2v2, Dejante and Jordan Poole or Steph Curry and DSJ.
Whew.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I think for me, I lean to the first one because I think Dejante has that safe floor, as I talked about. And if Steph Curry and Jordan Poole, Curry almost double the price on DraftKings. Like if they're both going to play 28 to 32 minutes, if we think this game blows out, like I think you're going to be more happy with the production from Poole than Curry in some shortened time. Obviously, we just made the case for DSJ, but I'm leaning with that first one.
I think I'm slightly leaning second, so we have not helped you.
Well, the next question from Romulus, one of my fellow Spurs fans, asking Ant Edwards or Chris Paul single entry on DK. I lean Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I just think I can't, like Chris Paul. We've talked about it, like what he's done. I think Chris Paul has a great chance of having like a 15-point, 12-assist game, but Anthony Edwards has a chance to score 35 real points on top of peripherals. So I'm going Anthony Edwards as well.
Yeah, completely agree. 2v2 here from P-Buck. Cat and John Collins or Joel Embiid and Jaco Puerto. I think I'm leaning the second one there.
I agree.
Another 2v2 from N6A here. Zach LaVine, PJ Washington or Ant Edwards, Gordon Hayward. That's really tough. I think I'm leaning the second one because I don't want to attack Joel Embiid with PJ, but both of those fine. I think in that case, if you can, I would probably run both. Like if you like the rest of that lineup, like just run two lineups with that 2v2. Another 2v2 in here from my guy Steelers fan. Me and Steelers fan having a much better Monday this week than we did last week. He's asking Embiid and Anthony Edwards or Cat and Zach LaVine, and that might be the closest one yet.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Again, I would run two lineups if you can, but if not, I'll lean the first side. I love Joel Embiid tonight and really strong play in Anthony Edwards as well, so I lean one there.
That's so close.
Mm-hmm.
I will lean the first as well, but just praying that Charlotte stays in that game.
Yeah. Tommy chiming in here. He's already running Cody Martin and Gordon Hayward. He's on the fence with Oubre. Would you be okay running those three guys together?
I would.
I'm as well. I'm fine running all three. Chris Ferris chiming in 2v2 here. Ant Edwards and Jimmy Butler or Joel Embiid and Dillon Brooks. DK single entry. My answer is the second one because I have real estate on Dillon Brooks Island, and it's nice over here. It's been a little chilly lately, Adam, but you can come over anytime. Which side of that 2v2 do you prefer?
It was, sorry, repeat it again. It was Edwards, or sorry,
and Jimmy.
Edwards and Jimmy.
Or Joel Embiid and Dillon Brooks.
I'm going Edwards and Jimmy.
Alrighty. Jeremy Grant or Triple J? This is a good one from Triple H.
Triple H?
Yeah.
I will lean Grant.
I also lean Grant. Much better matchup, and we talked about Jaron Jackson Jr.'s foul trouble. Not the toughest matchup with Bam out of there, but I think Grant's a little bit safer and has very similar, if not more, upside against the Thunder. Let's see. WNBA news: the Mercury fired their head coach, so tough one there. Never like to see a coach. Me especially, never like to see a coach lose their job. But we'll see. WNBA season coming back around in about 5 months. 10 seconds to lock here, Adam. So we appreciate everybody who joined in with us. And if you're joining, we're behind the paywall all last year. And our first show every day is behind the paywall here as well. But if you're tuning into our lock shows, for free on YouTube or Twitter, and you haven't signed up with FTN Daily, I would urge you to come check us out. Like the NBA package here has a state-of-the-art optimizer. It covers every slate every day. Proprietary player and ownership projections from Kyle Murray and Alex Blickel. You've got the NBA on-off splits tool, the advanced DVP tool, Adam, which is one of my favorites when I was playing, the infamous FTN Daily NBA Premium Discord channel that I've referenced and that Adam and I have been answering all the questions from for the last hour, and rankings from Fast Eddie Fear and myself every single day. Pricing here starts at $49.99 per month, but you can use that code FTNTV scrolling right below us, and that gets you 15% off every month of your subscription. Repeat, code FTNTV equals 15% off every month of your subscription here at ftndaily.com. And when you do join, hop in the Discord, tag Adam and myself, let us know that you're here because we would love to have you. All right, Adam, we've passed lock. 3 games have locked. I'm going to pull up some ownership that we can discuss real quickly, but I know is your heart rate rising a little bit. We're 75 minutes out from kick. How are you feeling about the game tonight?
I just really don't like the Patriots. Like,
dude, you, me, and the rest of America outside of New England.
I do think the Bills are the better team. The better team does not always win, as we saw in Week 1 when the Steelers played the Buffalo Bills,
and last night when we saw the Steelers play the Ravens.
Yeah, that's different though. I guess it's not different because I think Pittsburgh and Baltimore is the best rivalry in the NFL. It has been. Buffalo, New England, it's not up there because for the last 10 years it's been a joke because it's been Tom Brady winning by 40. But these teams obviously don't like each other, so I wish the game was like in a dome or like in weather that wasn't bad because I think the Bills would get I think this weather actually gives New England an edge, so I don't like that. But if it gets to a situation where Mac Jones has to keep up with Josh Allen, I like the Bills' chances. As good as Mac Jones has been, I like their chances.
Yeah, I mean, I think the weather situation is probably helping the Patriots with that ground game, right? Like, which is worrisome. But man, I got my fingers crossed for you. I always, anybody that can knock the Patriots down a peg, I'm always in that camp. Some of the ownership from these first 3 games, obviously with Philly and Charlotte locking at 7 Eastern, we had some massive ownership. Cody Martin coming in up top at 62%, followed by Shake Milton at 50%, Kelly Oubre 43%, PJ Washington 34%, Miles Bridges 30%, and I love Joel Embiid at just 23% owned. You know, it's not crazy low, but I think I would have at least double that if I was running 20 lineups tonight with the matchup that Embiid has.
Yeah, that's fair. Just if that game stays even remotely competitive, this could be like a 33-15 Embiid game.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the other notables here, Gordon Hayward, only 14.5%. That might be my favorite piece of ownership on that Charlotte
Especially
team.
At point, Hayward.
Absolutely. James Bouknight holding 10% ownership, so nothing crazy there. Jeremy Grant got 12. That's a little bit higher than I thought it was going to be. Miles Turner, 14%. Beef Stew, 8%. Kyle Kuzma, Trez Harrell, Seth Curry, Karis LeVert at 5%. Bradley Beal also there at 5%, which is pretty nice for that 8.8K tag. Kade Cunningham only 4%. Tobias Harris 4%. Like we kind of talked about the merits of him in tournaments, so you didn't have to play a ton to get over the field there. Kade Cunningham 4%. Josh Giddey 3%. Let's see, anything else here? Gotta be honest, I'm a little surprised Killian Hayes got 2.2% ownership, even on this 10-game slate. That's just, I'm surprised people got there. That's not bad though. He should get a little bit extra time with Corey Joseph out. So I guess that's gonna do it for us here, man. Like 10 minutes, they'll be kicking off the NFL Showdown stream for Monday Night Football. Obviously, Bills and Patriots, a big one in the AFC East, a big one for the AFC in general, and even bigger for my buddy Adam. So good luck to your Bills, Adam. We'll all be tuning in. And if you're subscribed to FTN, the FTN NFL package, go ahead and head over, get ready for that stream. What is it? D-Bro and Tenacious D, 2 of the showdown kings in the industry, breaking down this game. So that'll be a fun hour kicking off here in about 10 minutes. All right, Adam, I'm going to do it to you. It's not very fair, not very nice, but score prediction for the game tonight.
I'm going to go 24-16 Buffalo. I think after Trey White, with the torn ACL back home, this team knows how important this game is. The fans know, it's the Patriots of all teams. I think the Bills, after like so long of like, we can't get past the Patriots. And then after last year where it was all Buffalo and now everybody's back on the Patriots wagon, I think the Bills fans are going to be, and the Bills themselves are going to be like, all right, like we're still the best team in this division. And I think they get it done tonight. And if they don't, you probably won't hear from me for a while.
Well, A lot of basketball, a lot of football on tap for tonight. So we appreciate everybody joining us, whether you're in the Discord, YouTube, or Twitter. So for Adam, I'm Zach. Shout out Thomas, our producer extraordinaire behind the glass, as always.
Let's get these beans.
Good night.